Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. It's time for the C3 stream. All right, good evening. Hello. Welcome to Tuesday Night Teaching, everybody. I'm just reading over my notes here. Man, we got a lot to cover, but it's good stuff. It is so fun. Yeah. Welcome to Tuesday Night Teaching. On Tuesday nights, we are tracking through the Bible, having a whole lot of fun together. We are deep into the biblical narrative. On Tuesday nights, we grab a beverage of your choosing. Tonight, I'm drinking out of my Wisconsin mug. Represent. Drinking out of my mug some tea tonight. And we're going to be talking about like not just like one book of the Bible or one story, but we have the potential to cover just a whole smorgasbord tonight, because this tonight and where we're at in the story is where for a lot of people the Bible gets really confusing, and we are going to try to make it a little more accessible, a little bit easier to kind of wrap our brains around tonight. So how's everybody doing tonight? Here's my opening question. I don't know if you guys saw it. Who do you like more, King David or King Solomon, and why? All right, so we've studied we've done three big kings. Saul was the first one, but then we did David and Solomon. Both have pros and cons. Okay, father-son duo, and King David came first. Then King Solomon. Who'd you like more? Who'd you like learning about more? Who'd you like more? David and Goliath. David, kind of the Robin Hood guy, running around saving people. But David was messy, man. I mean, we saw how he went. Before he died, his like final words, departing words are, "Make sure you go kill some people for me." And then there's Solomon. We studied last week. Prolific writer, influencer, a thinker, asks for wisdom. God's like, hey, I'm going to bless you. What is it? If you could ask for something, what would you ask for? Solomon's like, wisdom, man. I got a big job being the king of your people. I feel totally unable to live up to what it means to be king of your people. So give me the wisdom to rule well. And that's pretty legit. But then Solomon has some trouble towards the end of his life too. He ends up chasing after some other gods, builds some foreign idols and pagan shrines. Whoops, not good. So complicated, complex characters, but still people that we can learn from, understand, empathize with. So that's what we've been doing the last 2 weeks. If you're curious, last 2-3 weeks, we've been studying some of the kings. Trudy is pulling a vote right now for King David because he loved God. I like it, Trudy. Simple and straightforward. And that's one of the cool things about David is, as messy as he was, like as messy as David was, you know, he did. He loved God. He owned up when he made mistakes. You know, Nathan the prophet calls him out on a big one, and he repents and all this sort of stuff. So David, even despite his brokenness and messiness, always kind of was anchored in his love for God. And I agree. I appreciate that about David. I think that's a pretty legitimate... That's a cool thing. Like, that's a really cool thing. I like Solomon's humility. Oh, we got a vote for Solomon coming in. All right. Yes, Proverbs. So good, Susan. Shout out to Susan and Greg. They did a fabulous job this last Sunday. If you joined us for 8 o'clock service, Susan, it was wonderful to see you and Greg leading worship. So you love the Proverbs. Okay. I dig it. Proverbs are so great, aren't they, guys? I mean, man, they're so rich. There's so much there. And one of the things that I really like about Solomon, it's something that I'm terrible at. Full disclosure, I'm horrible at, which is saying a lot in a few words. Solomon has the ability to capture in the book of Proverbs, as the attributed author. He's able to say so much in just like a one line. You know what I mean? It's like a comedian who tells an entire long, lengthy joke, but then you have comedians who give like one-liners, and they're just equally funny. Solomon, man, he's got an amazing ability to capture the one-liner. I like it. Proverbs. I'm also a sucker for Ecclesiastes, which supposedly is one of his books too. I really like Ecclesiastes. Chasing after the wind. There's nothing new under the sun. I'm a sucker for all that stuff. All right. Well, the vote stands even. Throw in there for the rest of you guys when you feel ready. We're picking up where we left off, though. So, welcome to Tuesday Night Teaching. So glad to have you here. We are picking up where we left off last time. As always, guys, if you ever missed one of the streams, you can always hop onto YouTube. You can always hop onto Vimeo, different places. Actually, I take that back. We stopped posting in Vimeo, but it's on YouTube and it's on Facebook. Nobody was watching on Vimeo, so. Oh, David takes a strong lead now. Yes, Sarah Tibbetts, well said. I always have a love for David because his story shows that God always loves the sinner despite the sin. God always loves the sinner despite the sin. You're so right. That's one of the good things. Oh, Joe! I love it. I'll split the difference as Solomon did. Oh, double points for Joe. That's a great reference. That's clever. That's clever. You, sir. That's a great... That's really funny, Joe. I love it, man. Split the difference, just like Solomon did. All right. Well, I'll call it a tie because I think they're both pretty incredible people that we can learn a lot about and a lot from. Now, part of the reason why I wanted to spend some time opening by kind of grounding ourselves in these really cool, complex characters is because from here, y'all, it's downhill. Ah! The next series of time that we spend together is really a period that we do not look at as a highlight reel in God's people. Like, oh man, it's tough from here on out. Like David, Solomon, pretty legit. Like, you know, yeah, there you go. I like it, Greg. David takes another tick for David. Come on, people. I like it. Keep it coming. While he failed as a human, he never lost sight of his God. Absolutely. I like that's a great way to say never lost sight of his God, which is more or less the thematic movement going forward, like keeping your eyes on God. And when we say God, we mean the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? We spent a lot of time in the beginning talking about the importance of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There's all sorts of gods out there that the Bible talks about. The Bible talks about all these idols out there, okay? And people worship all sorts of gods, so to speak. We continue to worship all sorts of gods. They just don't have the same face of, the ancient cultures attributed to them. The gods that we worship today are just as rampant. Greed, sex, we make idols of famous people or positions or jobs, whatever, however. So David, though, fixes his eyes truly and solely. He keeps himself focused on God and drags his eyes back to God. Even when he, his eyes do drift to Bathsheba, but then he, brings it back. So love it. Keep it coming. If you got more, throw it in there. From here on out, I like it because, like I said, here on out, it just gets a whole lot of messy, people. It's about to get a whole lot of messy. So let's dive in, guys. We're doing Bible study. We are jumping in. Let's have some fun. Love it. All right, let's have some fun. Let's do it. Picking up where we left off last week. Oh, I always screw that up because I forget from the time before. Fixing, boom, better. All right, so here's where we left off. This is the kingdom of Solomon. Solomon dies eventually. And we talked about last week a whole lot of Solomon. We talked about his transition and rise to power before that. But Solomon ends up finally dying, and dies in his old age, so he's not murdered or anything, so that's good. He's got that going for him. And what he is most known for, what he's most known for, wisdom. He's known for his wisdom in all these writings. But more concretely, play on words, more concretely, he was a builder. Solomon is known for his temple. Solomon built the very first definitive Jewish temple. And you can see a picture there in the top left-hand side. That is actually a graphic outline of what the temple looked like. It had stairs going up. There were some places for sacrifices outside, some big tables. You go into kind of like a portico or a porch, and then you go into the holy place. And the deeper you go, I mean, this temple was extremely ornate. It was extremely expensive to build. It took decades to build. Oh, I forget how many years. Oh, I got to be careful. It took Herod's temple later on, like, oh my gosh, a crazy amount of years. I don't remember exactly how many years this took to build. But I want to say something like, I'm nervous, don't quote me, 20, 30. It was more than like a 3-year construction project, okay? And then you have the Holy of Holies, which is supposed to be like the seat with which God sits. Like that's his throne room, if you will, okay? So Solomon is known for this famous temple. He was a big builder, big construction guy. He built this temple. He built himself a big palace, built himself a huge palace, and built a bunch of ports, built fortifications. He was, he had a thing for building, which sounds like a good idea, unless you're the dude on the bottom left who's carrying the brick. I mean, look at that guy. Look at that poor peasant. You see the size of that brick? Can you imagine how heavy that sucker is? He's got to carry that thing. That's how they built them back in the days, okay? They didn't have a backhoe. They did not have the same technological advances that we have today. They didn't have the same tools. They were still intelligent, bright, faithful people. And they, in their own right, managed to do incredible feats of architecture. The ancient world's incredible when you consider the tools and resources that they had. They did not have a CAD program, okay, to build this temple. Huh. The big thing with the temple, and the reason why I'm bringing it up, and the reason I'm pointing out that poor peasant on the bottom left-hand side of your screen there, Solomon built all of these amazing, incredible things using slave labor. Conscription. That's right. Worse yet, I don't know, is it worse yet? Like, I don't know how it could be better, frankly. Like, maybe I can't even say worse yet, but he used his own people, the people of Israel. He conscripted the laborers among his own peasantry, and even on top of that, he gave preferential treatment depending on where you lived. Ooh, not cool. If you lived down south, which is where David was from, you look on the map there, Judah, to the south in the yellow, you caught a break. You didn't have to work as hard or as long. The cycle, I'd have to go all the way back to my seminary notes. I remember a professor talking to me about this, lecturing on it, but it was a cycle of X number of years that you basically, one out of every so many years, I forget if it's like every 7 years or something like that, you have to give one out of, I'm making this up, don't quote me on this off the top of my head, but it is to affect 1 out of every like 7 years, 5 years, something like that. You had to show up for labor duty. And so you would farm year after year. This is a farming, agriculturally dependent culture system, right? Okay. So they're farming. And then all of a sudden you would take a year off and you'd show up and you do conscripted labor, and then you'd head back to your farm. If you go up and you live up north, if you're a northerner up north, the frequency with which you labor and the length of which you labor is increased. So instead of being once every 7 years, it's like once every 3 years. And instead of doing it for 1 year, you have to do it for like back-to-back years. Okay. The point is great disparity between North and South and their treatment. 7 years to build Solomon's temple. Wikipedia says 7. No way. For reals is? Thank you, Wikipedia. Thank you. Fact checked by Katie Matson. Appreciate that. Let's look it up. Solomon's Temple. 7 years. I feel like that's way short, but I'm known to be wrong. It's Herod's temple that's like takes ages. Like 30 years or something. Oh, okay. And then you also have the second temple. We're doing a fact check right now. Interestingly enough, Wikipedia is pretty good on some historical pieces, but you get always, you know, construction. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, he gets a bunch of stuff from Tyr Chronicles. Where'd you find the number 7 years? Oh, okay, here you go. According to 1 Kings, the foundation of the temple is laid in Ziv, the second month of the 4th year of Solomon's reign. Construction is by the 8th month of the year. Okay, I stand totally corrected, guys. Boy, that really builds credibility in your ability to believe what I say and teach. 7 years. Oh, that's what I'm thinking of. It's 20 years combined. That's what it is. So he builds the temple after the palace, and the palace, after the temple and palace, taking an additional 13 years is completed. That's right. Okay. So yeah, it's 7 specifically for. That's right, because it's funny. See, this stuff comes back eventually. He spends significantly more money and more time on his palace. So it's kind of, it's a funny statement when you look at Solomon a little bit here, because it's supposed to be this big, great, grand temple that we get laid out in scripture, and it's supposed to be like, you know, laden with gold and all this sort of stuff. But he spends more money and more time on his own palace. Thank you, Katie. Oh, that's good. Thanks for the fact check. Yeah, that's right. And then he ends up doing the dedication when this is all done. Super good. Thanks, Katie. Dig it. So Solomon builds his temple, though, and it's a big deal, and he builds up Israel, his kingdom. He built his kingdom, and so he does all of this, and it creates incredible animosity. Like, are you surprised? Between North and South. This whole preferential treatment stuff. Like, Northerners start hating Southerners, and Southerners start hating Northerners. I mean, there was already bad blood to begin with. We saw that. We've seen that in the last couple under King David and stuff. If you remember, King David becomes king of the South before he becomes king of the North as well. Before the North accepts him, he's king in the South for a handful of years. It's like 7 years. And then eventually the North accepts him as well as king. So there's animosity North and South. And it holds together more or less. There's a rebellion up north and stuff, but generally speaking, it holds together under Solomon. All right. Then Solomon's kid takes over. Solomon's kid's name is Rehoboam. Rehoboam. Oh, Rehoboam. All right. Solomon's kid takes over, and his name is Rehoboam. Point of interest. Yeah, look at the title here. The Northern Tribes Revolt. What do you think we're about to learn about? Point of interest here. I am in 2 Chronicles. Okay, so I mentioned when we began that you'll be learning a lot about how the Bible is structured. A reminder for you that the Bible is literally means biblio, literally means library. It's a collection of books, and it is not laid out in your table of contents. It is not laid out chronologically or narratively. It is laid out thematically or by genre. So, 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles overlap. Okay? Different authors and nuance of, according to their authors, they stress different things. But 1st Chronicles and 2nd Chronicles overlap with 1st and 2nd Kings. So I'm about to read to you from 2nd Chronicles, but the majority of our time we're going to spend more time in Kings, the Kings narrative than the Chronicles. Second Chronicles chapter 10 picks up with Rehoboam. He goes to Shechem. Now, Shechem's a major city up north. Okay? Rehoboam heads up to Shechem, and Shechem is kind of like the center of power to the north. If we go back, let me show you the map. So if you look on the map, you've got Jerusalem. Just a reminder for you, Jerusalem is kind of right on that border, right? North-south border. Jerusalem, the reason David picked it was because it was on the border. But if you keep tracking north, just to the kind of the top of that sword, you'll notice Shechem. That's where Shechem is. So Shechem is a really significant city, very, very significant city in the northern part of Israel, but it's not the capital. Jerusalem is technically the capital, or at least for the moment. So Rehoboam takes a trip from Jerusalem up to Shechem, and all the northern tribes, where all Israel had gathered to make him king. We are now deep enough in the story that if you hear the term Israel, it doesn't mean all ancient Israel. I know this is so confusing, guys, but bear with the Bible on this one, okay? At this point in time, when you get to 1st and 2nd Kings or 1st and 2nd Chronicles, when the Bible begins to refer to Israel in this fashion, it means the northern chunk of ancient Israel. The 10 tribes that settled up north is referred to as Israel. The 2 tribes who settled down south is referred to as Judah. I realize that's super confusing because more often than not, we refer to like Israel as the entirety, or as a people, or as a person. Jacob, his name actually gets changed to Israel, which is where this all derives from. So that's as clear as mud for all of you. The point is, he goes up north, and he's there with all the northern people, and they have gathered to establish and affirm him as king. The south has already accepted him because he's David's grandson, Solomon's son. He's direct line, so the south is like he's a shoo-in. But up north, there's been a rebellion not that long ago, and this guy Jeroboam, yes, I know, Jeroboam was part of that rebellion. Okay, so you got Rehoboam, Solomon's son, and you have Jeroboam, who is a rebel up north. When Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard of this, he returned from Egypt, for he had fled to Egypt to escape King Solomon. So Jeroboam was mad at Solomon for the whole slavery thing. Solomon squashed the rebellion, and Jeroboam fled down to Egypt to find amnesty. He hears that Solomon's dead, and Rehoboam is going to be king now, so he comes back home. The leaders of Israel summoned him and Jeroboam, and all Israel went to speak with Rehoboam. All right, so it's a big powwow with all the power players up north. Your father was a hard master, they said. Lighten the harsh labor demands and the heavy taxes that your father imposed on us. Oh, by the way, the north you had to serve in the army more, and you had heavier taxes if you lived up north. Then we will be your loyal subjects. So your dad was a jerk. Lighten up, give us a tax break, and stop making us come down south to build your cities. Rehoboam says, let me think on it. Come back in a few days. And so then Rehoboam is smart in so much as he seeks the wisdom of others. He goes to the older men who counseled his father Solomon, said, what's your advice? How should I answer the people? The older counselors reply, if you're good to these people and you do your best to please them, give them favorable answers, they'll be your loyal subjects. Basically, they hated your dad. You can get in their good graces if you just give them a break. All right? Give them a break on this. And if you do, they'll love you. Rehoboam doesn't like the advice. So, how often do we do this, guys? When we don't like what we hear, we go to someone else where we are confident we are going to hear what we want. Not what we need, but we're going to hear what we want to hear. Rehoboam needed to hear, slavery's dumb, dude, lay off it. But what he wanted to hear, well, He wanted to hear what he's about to hear from the younger guys. Rehoboam rejects the advice of the older men. Instead, he asks the opinion of the young men who'd grown up with him and were now his advisors. What do you guys think? How should I answer these people who want to lighten the burdens imposed by my father? This is what you should tell those complainers who want a lighter burden. Ha! My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Yes, that is an innuendo, and yes, it is supposed to be, like, comical. Yes, my father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips. I will beat you with scorpions. So these guys are jerks. Can I say that? Yeah, there's great long-term planning and wisdom for you, dudes. These are Rehoboam's advisors. Well, they all come back, and Rehoboam, he followed the counsel of the younger guys. He says, my father laid on heavy burdens on you. I'm going to make it even worse. My father beat you with whips. I'm going to beat you with scorpions. So the king paid no attention to the people. Bummer. Oh, subnote. This turn of events was the will of God, for it fulfilled the Lord's message to Jeroboam through the prophet. What he's referring to, what the Bible is referring to, what the author of Chronicles is doing, it's reminding you that Solomon screwed up. And God said before Solomon died, the kingdom will be ripped away from your family. Before Solomon died, because he screwed up and started to worship other gods, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob came to him and said, that's the biggest no-no you could have ever done. And as a result, I will take away this kingdom from your family. So the Chronicles is reminding you and saying, look, when you don't live in covenant with God, when you don't keep God first and foremost, when you don't keep God at the center of your heart, your being, your life, your all, bad things are about to happen. When all Israel, that is the north, realized that the king had refused to listen to them, they said, down with the dynasty of David! It's rebellion in the streets, y'all. We have no interest in this son of Jesse. Jesse is David's father. Back to your homes, O Israel. Look out for your own house, O David. So basically, this is the kingdom fracturing. It's civil war. All the people of Israel return home. Rehoboam continues to rule over the Israelites, or the northerners, who lived in the towns of Judah. So if you were a northerner who had relocated down south, Rehoboam was your king. But all the rest of the north, they have seceded. They have established themselves as separate. Down with the dynasty. We got no interest in you. Israel, for Israelites, look out for your own house, southerners. David people, forget you. King Rehoboam sent a guy who's in charge of forced labor. Yeah, this was real smart. Sends the guy who's in charge of the slave camps to restore the order up north. Oh, that's a brilliant move. The people of Israel stone him to death. Shocker. When the king hears about this, he's terrified, and he runs away back down to Jerusalem, where he's feels confident and safe. To this day, the northern tribes of Israel have refused to be ruled by a descendant of David. All right, so the reason I share all this story with you is because from here on out, we have what is referred to as the divided monarchies. We have a king in the north and a king in the south. A king in the north. I mean, this is straight up Game of Thrones. What we were about to review and what we were about to read is Game of Thrones. Before there was Game of Thrones, there was the Bible, people. No joke. Before the Game of Thrones was popular and cool, there was the Bible, which is gritty and dealt with pain and people and violence and political machinations and all this sort of stuff. The Bible. Just saying. It was there first. So here you see the fracturing. The north is kind of this orange. The south is this yellow. You see the sword there indicating there were some skirmishes and battles that start erupting. Just light stuff. Not full on like south is going to come north and north is going to come south. They just fought over the border. Borderland fighting. And Rehoboam's not a very assertive guy. So he just chills in the south. And he's just lost the entire north. Now, Jeroboam, not Rehoboam. Joe Morrow. That's hilarious. Man, you guys are on fire tonight. You guys are on fire. That's hilarious. The Joes coming quick, hot, and heavy. Jon Snow was also resurrected. Coincidence? I think not. That's hilarious. Yeah, I love it. Just saying, guys. It about to get real nasty, real weird in the Bible because it's oh man. Here we go. You guys ready? Here we go. So Jeroboam, not Rehoboam, Jeroboam, the guy who had done the revolt previously under King Solomon, came back home is like, man, this could not be better for him. He's like, the pump has been primed for him to come to the rescue of the north. So he gets declared king of the north. There's the king of the north is Jeroboam now. He the king of the north. And he systematically starts setting up and establishing the northern kingdom with its own values, own rules. I mean, the rallying cry is, hate the South, down with David, the North forever. I mean, for reals, you know. And he does that militarily, he does that politically, and he even does it spiritually. He sets up competing religious systems. Yeah, God really likes that. Jeroboam goes so far as to establish rival temples up north. He does two. He builds one in Dan and one in Bethel. Those are the names of some towns, some cities up north. He builds these temples trying to say, look, for all of you people up north, you don't need to go to Jerusalem to have a faith life. You don't need to go to Jerusalem to be religious. Just go to your local place, Bethel or Dan, if you're, go to whichever one is more convenient. And then on top of it, he places in those temples golden calves. Did y'all just hear that? I mean, he straight up begins the abandonment process of abandoning what we would refer to as the traditional Jewish faith. He is saying, look, down south and David is associated with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That means we need to get our own gods. We up north. And so we doing our own thing up here. We're going to start worshiping our own gods. And so he makes and fashions the images of a golden calf. That's like a reference back to Moses coming down the mountain. And what were the people worshiping? A golden calf. And God was pissed. Moses was furious. Oh man, bad news bears. Jeroboam, and just to make sure, if you look on the map there, you see these little, Dan is way up at the top. Bethel is just over the border. Kind of halfway through in the country. And by setting one up way up north and one way down, theoretically, on the southern edge of the northern kingdom, he is covering the entire northern kingdom of Israel in idol worship. That's what he's doing. He is establishing and replacing the country, the temple, and covering the entire country in idol worship. Boom. Not good. So he establishes a new capital in Shechem, because that was the big city that they were all just hanging out in. So Shechem's the hot spot, and he builds some forts. The south and the north are fractured, and the north has rejected not only David, but David's God. And that's big, guys. That's real big. That's real big. All right. Then this happens. Here you go. This is one of the best graphics that I can show you, because this is your snapshot of Game of Thrones right here. All right. At the top, you have 12 squares representing the tribal league. That is the 12 tribes of Jacob. The 12 sons of Jacob make up the 12 tribes of ancient Israel. The 12 tribes of ancient Israel, which we tracked in the book of Judges, finally gives way to a unified monarchy, a kingdom. It goes from a tribal confederation to a kingdom under a king. The first king is Saul. The second king is David. The third king is Solomon. Solomon onward, it fractures into two kingdoms. The one on the right, which would be the northern kingdom, is Israel. The one on the left is the southern kingdom, referred to as Judah. Let's focus on the right for the moment, the northern kingdom. Let's talk about north. You can see there, this all happened in 922 BC. That's when it happened, 922. In 922 BC, it fractures, and Jeroboam is in charge. Okay? Look at the number of kings. All those names, those are kings and dynasties, different families. Jeroboam hands it on to the one, and then all of a sudden he gets so Jeroboam hands the kingdom off to Nadab. Let me fact check myself on this. Fact check, because this gets so convoluted, guys. Yep. Nadab is his son, Jeroboam's kid, who dies after a year of ruling. Nadab makes it 1 year before he's murdered, and there's a coup. And this is the habit with the northern Israel. Israel just goes bonkers. The whole northern kingdom. It's a bloodbath. It's like a king rises, he establishes himself, he hands it off to a son, maybe a couple generations, and then there's a coup. And there's murder and mass murder, and whole families get wiped out. And then the next dynasty is established. And then the next dynasty is established. And then the next. All those colors represent a different dynasty. So, I mean, you can just see that. That's nuts. I mean, you want to talk about political instability? Holy criminy. Look at all that jazz. There is murder and chaos up north. And behind it all, you see increasing rampant idol worship. Ugh. All right, now focus left side. Judah. You got Rehoboam in 922. You'll see check marks and X's. If they got an X next to their name, the author of 1st and 2nd Kings doesn't like him. If he gets a check mark, the author likes him. Okay? He's framed positively. And the statement that a king is held up and over and against. You know a king is a good king in the south if he walks, quote, walks in the footsteps of his forefather David. So David is the golden standard for kings in the south. And so the question is, you know, did this king live like David? And if he did, he gets a check mark. If he doesn't, he gets an X. Some of them don't have any marks because they're just too boring. Nothing major happens. If they had an X, it means they built shrines to pagan gods. Okay, so they fostered idolatry. If it's a check mark, it means usually that they got rid of idolatry, that they tore down temples. So in the north, rampant idolatry. In the south, depending on who's in charge, it's kind of like, it's kind of like a parallel that I would think back to in more recent history would be the tension, for example, with like Catholic versus Protestant that happened in Europe. And I'm thinking particularly of like
you know, Ireland and actually probably England is the best one. Because depending on who was in charge, that monarch would just be like, okay, we're all Catholic now, or okay, we're all Protestant now. And the whole country would just instantly be considered that, right? And then they would knock down all the things that would be one way, and then the next person would come in charge, and they would reestablish it all. It's basically what happened in Judah, is a faithful king would knock down all the pagan temple shrines, and then reestablish worship at the temple, the original temple, Solomon's temple. Then the bad guy would come up after him and rebuild all the pagan temples and rebuild all the idol shrines. So it just is this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's horrible. It's terrible. So this is 1st and 2nd Kings in a snapshot, and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. That's what you're looking at. You're looking at a summary statement of all the names and people in those books. Now, on top of that, because 1st and 2nd Chronicles is happening at the same time as 1st and 2nd Kings, you also have prophets running around throughout these different kingdoms and kingships, trying to preach and teach and call people back to God. I want to show you. Oh, nope, I can't, because my computer couldn't handle it. Oh, no. Okay, I'm going to try to do this real quick. Timeline, prophets, and kings of Israel. Let's just Google it. See if we can get an image for us. Oh, I don't have the rights to show you any of this stuff, do I? Oh. Okay. So, trying to find a good one. So there's still a lot of debate. Not everybody's entirely sure when, what prophet, timelines, and who was running around when. Like, that's a big question mark. Scholars debate who was running around when. That's a good one. Open a new window. I'm going to see if I can show you guys like a pictorially. Whoa. Don't know how reliable this is. Don't really think it probably is. But it'll do. But it'll do. Okie dokie. Alright, we'll try it. Okay, I'm going to show you something, and maybe it'll show up. Can you guys even make sense of any of this? Can you even... Well, I'm going to try. I'm going to try. Bear with me. Okay, guys. So basically, these are kings. Here's Jeroboam. You see Jeroboam on your left in yellow, and Rehoboam is in green. And you'll notice that there are prophets in between the two. Like, for example, Elijah and Elisha are right below Ahab and Jehu. Yehu or Jehu. These are two really big prophets that happen, and we can look at them. But what I really want to show you, though, is a little bit later. Here's a better example. Jeroboam the second. Notice below him you have Amos, Hosea, Micah, Isaiah. You've got other books of the Bible that you'll notice. So that's what I'm trying to point out, is that when you look at your Bible, and here's your table of contents. 1st Kings, 2nd Kings, 1st Chronicles, 2nd Chronicles. The prophets come a lot later in your table of contents, but they were contemporaries with a lot of what we're studying right now. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. These are all the prophets. And many of them were running around during 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Okay? Some of these guys were running around giving sermons, which is basically what these books are. They're a record of their sermons during these books. These are like historical books. Does that make sense? Are we good with that? You guys are good with that. All right, I'm going to stop talking. So there you go. Left side, you'll notice the kingdom lasts a lot longer than the right side. We'll talk about why probably next week. We'll talk about the empires next week. I don't know, we'll have time today. But Rehoboam, a couple of kings I want to point out to you on the left side. The right side, the Israel kings, they're all bad because they all worship idols. Left side, yeah, okay, good. So here's an example. Left side, Judah. Where's Josiah? He's at the bottom. Here he is. So here's a good example. If you go on the left side and you track down through the kings, and Hezekiah. Hezekiah is another great one. Yeah. Okay. Let's do Hezekiah. I like Josiah better, but we'll do Hezekiah. Hezekiah is king, and the Bible gives him a check mark. The graphic gives him a check mark. He's a good king. He follows in the footsteps of David. He gets rid of idol worship down south. If he sees a shrine, he destroys it. And he centralizes worship. And he believes in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he stands up to one of the big empires, the Assyrian Empire, that comes and actually destroys the north. The north ceases to exist because an empire swallows it up. A foreign empire, the Assyrians come along and they swallow up the north. Hezekiah is king down south when the north is getting conquered. But he trusts in God, and he has faith in God, and he does what God asks of him. And God, because he is faithful to God, God does some supernatural stuff and keeps the south safe from the Assyrian Empire that dominated the north. Yep, Greg, you're welcome. I'm glad it made sense to you, because I felt like it was about as clear as mud. I had a really good graphic before, but I don't remember what I closed it out because my CPU couldn't handle streaming at the same time. But it is confusing. People don't realize that, like, so like looking at this, a lot of the prophets came and were active during some of these kings. This is when a lot of them, it's not a lot of them, some of them, let's be clear, some of them happened. Like, let's get you a definitive example. I think we said, like, Hosea is the one that comes to mind. Micah comes to mind. Yeah, Amos. Amos and Hosea were actually contemporaries. And depending, what is it? Hosea is a southern boy who's sent north. I think that's what it is. I'd have to brush up on it, but I believe it's Hosea is a southern shepherd who is sent to the north, calling the north to repentance as like a last-ditch effort before God sends the big guns, sends Assyria against them. So, yeah, these prophets run around preaching doom and gloom, and that's exactly what happens is doom and gloom, because they don't repent. They worship idols. Things got so bad, guys, that literally archaeologists have found that in ancient Israel during this time period, they can locate the time based on strata and stuff that they uncover, that a lot of Jewish homes, a lot of Israelite homes had shrines inside their home with little idols, right? So you'd have a Baal idol and a little Asherah idol, like a Jewish person, a Israelite with an idol to a different god in their home. That's how bad things got. Very bad, very bad. All right. So Hezekiah is an example of a good king. He stays true to God. He gets rid of the bad stuff, and God does some amazing, incredible things through him. Josiah is another one. Josiah is one of my favorite names. If we ever had a boy, which we are not, we are having 3 girls. We just found out we're having 3 girls, tripling down on little girls. But if we were to have a boy, I would have pulled for and advocated for the name Josiah, because I think Josiah is awesome. He is one zealous dude, that Josiah. Josiah is a fascinating story. Josiah is a young king. He comes to power, and when Josiah becomes king, they find the temple has fallen into disarray. because it's fallen into disarray because of all the previous kings. It's like good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, right? Josiah comes to reign, and they find in the basement of the temple a book of the law. They find the book of Deuteronomy. Okay, that's what happens. Some priests are digging around down in the bookshelves in the basement of the temple and are like, wow, this is really good stuff. We should bring this to the king. So they bring the book of Deuteronomy to the king, and Josiah hears it read and just starts weeping and totally launches Josiah launches a purging, a cleansing. He's intense. Josiah is so filled with fervor and conviction that he, ruling from the south, one, gets rid of everything he can find in the south that has anything to do with idols, and then he starts making inroads up north. He starts taking soldiers and crossing the border and destroying whatever he can find up north as well. He takes his armies and he starts destroying stuff up north, and once again consolidates worship at the Jerusalem Solomon's temple. He burns anything associated with idols. He kills their priests. It's like full-scale war on idols under Josiah. It's pretty intense. It's pretty intense. I wanted to show you, what time is it? Yeah. Let's spend a little bit of time. I want to dive into this a little bit deeper. I want to tell you guys about two particular prophets as examples who really are a microcosm for how crazy this time was, this period in ancient Israel. And that's the story of Elisha and Elisha. Yes, that's right. Elijah, I should say Elijah and Elisha. Let's go look at Elijah and Elisha. Elijah, with a J, literally means my God is Yahweh, or the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So God goes out of his way to call a guy, and the guy's name is my God is Yahweh. And so the backdrop to what's happening here, the battle that's going on, it's God versus the idols. That's what this is all about. It's God versus idols. Okay? And so he raises up Elijah, whose name means, let's be clear. My God is Yahweh. Boom. There ain't no messing around here. And he's one intense dude, Elijah. Holy cow. He's got guts. He goes and he faces off with King Ahab. If you look on the right-hand side at 869 in the Bible, you'll find King Ahab. And Elijah, and then Elijah's student, Elisha. Yes, I know. I'm sorry. That's so confusing. They were very active at this period of time. What Elijah is most famous for, arguably, is his battle with the priests of the idol religions. So let's go to it. The contest on Mount Carmel. This is from 1 Kings chapter 18. And it's Elijah versus King Ahab. King Ahab loves idols. He's a bad dude. He hates God, loves idols, all this sort of stuff. Later on in the third year of the drought, the Lord said, "Go and present yourself to King Ahab. Tell him, soon I will send the rain." Elijah went. They're in a drought. Meanwhile, the famine had become very severe in Samaria. Ooh, side note. The northern kingdom of Israel changes its capital from Shechem to Samaria. Ever heard of the Good Samaritan? The Good Samaritan is a reference to the northern kingdom. The capital of the northern kingdom is Samaria. up north is having a hard time. King Ahab summons Obadiah. Obadiah was a devoted follower of the Lord. By the way, Obadiah has a prophetic book. Once Jezebel, the queen, had tried to kill all the Lord's prophets, Obadiah had hidden 100 of them in caves. He put 50 prophets. Let's get past all this. Let's get to the good stuff. Where does it come? He challenges them to a duel, basically. Here we go. This is the good stuff. All right. So there's a big, long exchange between Elijah and King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. You and your family are the troublemakers, for you have refused to obey the commands of the Lord and have instead worshipped the images of Baal. Baal is that indigenous god going all the way back to the book of Judges. He is represented as having a calf or a bull head, and he is a god of thunder. Now summon all Israel to join me at Mount Carmel, along with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of Asherah. Asherah, just a reminder for you, goes all the way back to the book of Judges as well. Asherah is an indigenous female deity who has many breasts and is a fertility goddess. And the way that you worship her is by having sex. And the goal of the indigenous religion is for Baal, the bull and thunder god, to impregnate and have sex with Asherah so that his sperm will fall from the heavens as rain. That's what the North believes. Okay? That's what the North is doing. The North is worshiping Baal and Asherah, who have the support of the queen. Ahab summons all the people and says, all right, it's a throwdown. Then Elijah stood in front of them and said, how much longer will you waver, hobbling between your two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. And the people were completely silent. I mean, this story represents the entirety of 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. God versus Baal. The Lord Yahweh versus Baal. Elijah says, I am the only one. I'm the only prophet of the true Lord God Almighty, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. I'm the only one left. But Baal has 450 priests, prophets. So it's 450 to 1. Bring 2 bulls. The prophets of Baal may even choose whichever one they want. Cut it to pieces, lay it on the wood of their altar, but don't set fire to it. I'll do the same. It's a fair fight. I'll get all my sacrifice ready. You get your sacrifice ready. I'll get my sacrifice ready. Then call on the name of your God, and I'll call on my God. Let's prove which God is real. The God who answers by setting fire to the wood is the true God. And all the people agree. All right. Now, a couple things to note here. One, it's 450 to 1. So the odds are not in Elijah's favor. Further, Mount Carmel is up north. It's up north. Elijah is the visiting team. Baal has home field advantage. Baal has the numbers. Baal has the home field advantage. And on top of it, Baal is the god of thunder and lightning and storms. So, when you call on the name of your God and the God casts down and sets fire to it, this is basically saying, have Baal send lightning and strike and start a fire on your altar. I mean, you worship the God of lightning and thunder. Just have him do what he supposedly does. You have the home field advantage. You've got the numbers, and this is supposedly what your God is good at. This is what your God does. He sends lightning and he sends thunder, and he should send lightning and set a fire to the wood. This should be simple. This should be easy. It is stacked in Baal's favor. You go first. There are a lot of you. Elijah's such a stooge. He's a great guy. He's another complex hero. He's oh man. So they prepare one of the bulls and they place it on the altar. They call out on the name of their God from morning until noontime. Oh, Baal, answer us. But there was no reply of any kind. Then they danced, hobbling around the altar they'd made. So they start doing a rain dance, okay? They start doing their rituals. They're getting nervous. They're getting a little desperate here. I mean, hours have passed by. They started the worship service early in the day. Half the day is gone, and there ain't nothing happening. So they start ramping up. They start increasing. They go from simply just praying to now they're dancing and hobbling and whooping, and they're hobbling and hollering. About noontime, Elijah begins to mock them. Hey, I don't think he hears you. Try shouting some louder. Elijah's funny. He's such a crass character. You gotta shout. He just can't hear you. I mean, Elijah's taunting these people. Shout louder. Maybe he's asleep. Surely he's a god. Perhaps. Maybe he's daydreaming. Or relieving himself. Okay, this is quite comical. Y'all should appreciate this. When he says perhaps he's daydreaming or relieving himself, he means in the Hebrew, going number 2, sitting on the can, stuck in the bathroom, but more. He uses colorful language. Is that a nice way to say it? He uses a colorful expression. You know, maybe your God is just too busy taking a dump. Oh, maybe he's on a trip. He's just hanging out on a different part of the planet right now. He'll be back soon. Oh, maybe he's asleep. He needs to be wakened. I mean, Elijah is overtly making fun. Aggressively making fun of them. They shout louder, and they actually begin to cut themselves. This is bizarre, but as part of their ritual practice, they begin to inflict wounds to try to grab the attention and to show their level of desperation. They are crying out to Baal to do something to the point of self-harm. I mean, this shows what kind of God they have, right? Whereby self-harm, they hope to garner his attention. They raved all afternoon until the time of the evening sacrifice. There's still no sound. There's still no reply. There's still no response. Elijah says to all the bystanders, the crowd who's watching, come on over here. So it's kind of like Baal's people had a chance. They had all day. Nothing happened. Elijah steps forward and he cracks his fingers and says, game time. He takes 12 stones, one to represent each of the 12 tribes of ancient Israel. This is going back to the time of Judges. He used the stones to rebuild the altar in the name of the Lord. Then he digs a trench around it large enough to hold water gallons. He piles wood on the altar, prepares the sacrifice, and then he says, look, fill 4 large jars with water and pour the water over the offering and over the wood. I mean, he is going so far right now. He is grinding this competing faith into the dust. He has no mercy for these Baal worshipers whatsoever. He says, "You outnumbered me. This is in your home territory. This is supposedly what your God does. Oh, and by the way, douse mine with water." Then he says, "Do it again. And just in case you missed it, do it a third time." So they did, and the water ran around the altar and even filled the trench. I mean, he is over the top on this, guys. He is so aggressive. He is so in your face. At the usual time for the offering and the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet walks up to the altar and he prays. And he's very specific about naming who he's praying to. "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, prove today that you are the God. You are real. You are the God in Israel, and I am your servant. Prove that I have done all this at your command. Answer me so that these people do this. So these people, bystanders, the people who inhabit and live in the northern kingdom where idol worship is rampant, wake them up, God, and do this so they will know that you are the true, real God, and you are trying to bring them back to yourself. You're trying to rescue them, save them from everything they just witnessed from the Baals." Immediately, the fire of the Lord flashed down from heaven and burned up the bull, the wood, the stones, and the dust. It even licked up the water in the trench. Woo! This is the mic drop moment. He doesn't just burn up the sacrifice. God annihilates the whole stinking thing, down to the water in the trench. And the people say, "The Lord, he is God." Elijah sees all the prophets. Don't let a single one of them escape. And then he takes them down and he kills them one by one. Told you this book's intense. I mean, this is Game of Thrones. Warring gods and warring nations and kings and queens, and here you have this holy man. It's 450 to 1. He's got to convince everybody, or he's a dead guy. So there you go. That's the big one. That's a major story, guys, in the in these specific books, First and Second Kings. The king and queen find out about it, the queen specifically, and she vows to kill. She promises, she shakes her hand at the sky and promises to kill Elijah and sends out hit squads and assassins to get him. So as soon as he finishes this big victory moment, he has to book it, and he runs down south again. He gets out of the north and he runs to a mountain. He runs and flees for his life. Oh man, talk about intense. All right, that for you is a small taste of the intensity of these books and how messy and messed up they are. They are violent. There is murder and rebellions and coups. There is idol worship gone rampant. But there is also the pervasive, faithful work of God. Even with all this junk filling ancient Israel, God and God's prophets are trying to wake the people up and shake them out of their habits and lifestyles that they have succumbed to. Ooh. All right, more to come. There you go. That was a big chunk of kind of thematically what we'll find in these books. It is, whoa, I'm late. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. It's 8:40 already. I got to wrap this sucker up. Thanks for being part of the C3 stream. Time to turn it off. That was fun, though. I mean, right? We'll pick up next week. We'll talk about what happens next. But you basically, tonight, we covered 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, and a great number of prophets, like prophetic books in thematic summary. So we covered a lot of ground. Thanks for hanging out tonight, guys. That was a blast. What fun. I have fun hanging out with you guys. Hope it was fun for you as well. Thanks for being part of that online community. I really do enjoy spending time with you on the C3 stream, joining me and hanging out and doing Bible study together. Thanks for being a part of it. Thanks for being part of not only the online community, but just a more full expression of what it means to be Christ Church. We're in the middle of a sermon series right now, having a lot of fun talking about strapped and money. I'm up this coming week. It's going to be great. Excited for it. Money and money management is something I'm very passionate about, and so I get the privilege of kind of picking up where we left off last week, talking about money. And then that's coming up on Sunday. Of course, before Sunday is Thursday morning meditation, so join me on Thursday morning for some meditation time where we can hang out and read scripture and do prayer and Holy Spirit shout outs. Would love to have you come and be a part of that as well. So, hey, thanks for being part of the stream tonight. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for hanging out. Hope it was fun. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, guys, all of you, for hanging out. Can't wait to see you again, whether it is online on Thursday morning or whether it's online or on site on Sunday morning as well. God bless you. Have a wonderful night. Go live some lives. Go elevate Christ and be a church for those who aren't here yet. Thanks, guys.